Hello, you, and welcome at eSpace, the entrepreneurship space here at the University of Geneva during the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020. So, in a few minutes, we will start a masterclass on the topic of where to play, which is an ideation methodology to help you unleash your creativity. And for that, we have the distinguished pleasure to have a guest and to have a class master that is Marc Gruber, which is the Vice President for Innovation at EPFL and co-author of the book Where to Play, 3 Steps for Discovering Your Most Valuable Market Opportunities. So this session, that you know, is co-hosted by the Global Shippers Community Geneva Hub. Marc Gruber, if you are with us, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
Good
Hello.
morning. Hello. So Marc Gruber will give now this masterclass, so I give you the floor.
Thank you very much for hosting me this morning. I have a pretty important message for the emerging entrepreneurs and those who are looking at innovative projects, which is a message that we have learned through time and again through, of course, observing companies being started up in the tech space by looking at research results. I'm also a researcher of entrepreneurship. And what we have seen time and again is that the serial entrepreneurs, those who have done it repeatedly, have actually quite a different process compared to the novice entrepreneurs when they engage in the early steps of their entrepreneurial process. What they are doing is to look at multiple opportunities, because what they have learned is that not each and every opportunity one sees is a good one. What they have learned is basically to look at multiple opportunities initially and then say, hey, this is a better project than that one to pursue. Okay. In contrast, the novice entrepreneurs, those who have do it the first time, what we typically see is that they jump at the first project or opportunity they see, which basically means, well, they have not really understood whether what they want to do is actually a promising path forward. So what I'm going to introduce to you in the next 40 minutes or so is a method that helps you to actually become like the serial entrepreneurs, to start thinking more broadly about opportunities, to try to understand whether the opportunity that you might have in your head right now is actually a good one. And if you don't have yet an opportunity, the method, the approach that I will explain to you will help you to be more likely to find a good one. Okay, so that's a bit the outline for the next 45 minutes, 40 minutes. We will have time for Q&A afterwards. You can put those in the chat function and we come back to this. But big picture, if you look at what's happening, and this is a very interesting statistic from CB Insights from last year, they looked at why startups fail. And just look at the very top reason. The top reason why startups fail is there is no market need. And this is kind of astonishing, surprising, even shocking, because as an entrepreneur, you should make sure that there is a market that you want to address. Peter Drucker, the famous entrepreneurship scholar, book writer, he said, look, the purpose of creating a company is not to create the organization, it's to create a customer. Okay. And ideally, not only one, but multiple customers, of course. So in a way, when we look at this top reason, there's something we can work on early on to avoid falling into this trap that there is no market need. And if you look at the second reason, ran out of cash, that often is related with the first one, because cash generation happens typically via the customers. The revenues you're going to achieve will help you keep your venture afloat. So what I'm going to do is to help you understand if you have a market need, if there's a market opportunity that will lead you to a survivable, well-performing venture, hopefully in the end. For those of you who are already entrepreneurs, what this method that I'm going to introduce you to helps you with is to figure out a good market in which to scale and create massive new wealth. Okay. The second statistic I want to share with you is this one. This comes out of the dissertation of Sharon Tal, who has written the book Where to Play with Me, and she has found out in her dissertation that actually 73% of all startups had to pivot, meaning they had to move from the first target market to another one. And if you think about it, this is also as astonishing as the first statistic that I shared with you. It has two implications. Number one, let's try to improve our understanding of if this is a good opportunity, a good market to start with anyway. This early stage choice, let's try to understand that better. But also, because we don't have a crystal ball with us, let's try to create a startup that is more agile, that has basically put agility into the DNA of the startup. What do I mean with this? By choosing a good brand name, by hiring certain types of people, you will create a startup that is much more agile and can move from one domain to another, as a plan B, maybe, if the first domain was not good enough, or even as a stepping stone to a larger market, in a positive sense, create a startup that is more agile. And these are the two main themes that I want to spend my time on next. These are themes that are helping to work on the company, on the venture, on the project, okay? These are highly strategic questions that we are addressing in. And I'm emphasizing this so much because I see too many entrepreneurs actually working on the in. What do I mean with this? They are working like a little hamster in the wheel on answering customer calls, talking to suppliers, figuring out a better production chain, whatever it is. They're working typically on the in, working, and there are lots of phone calls that you get, Zoom calls that you have to take. And this prevents you somehow, if 95% or 99% of your day are clustered with these types of inactivity, this prevents you from working on the on. But as the entrepreneur, if you don't work on the on, no one else does this for you. That's your job to figure out what a good design, what a good setup for your venture is. And the two questions that I just mentioned, figuring out a good market to start with, and second, putting the agility into the DNA of the startup. These are two vital questions that are on the on side. So keep this on and in your mind, maybe make even a poster in your office reminding you that you need to work on the on, not only on the in. The in is always crying, shouting at you, but the on does not. So remind yourself of this. What you need to understand as well is that, when you are starting off a project, what we observe is typically that the project is not the rigid thing. It's your thinking about the project that might be too inflexible. So I truly invite you to, for the next, for the remainder of my talk, to lean back and try to become more flexible in how you reflect on your venture, how you reflect on what you're designing there as your venture. This is your choice of what you want to do. Oftentimes these choices are maybe not transparent to you because you just jump at an opportunity or make a choice because others have made the same choice. I want to unearth these choices and show you how you can be easily much more flexible. A theme that is underlying what I will want to say is basically a theme that nowadays we are living at a time when there's a lot of flexibility in what you can offer to which customers, and this flexibility is enabled by technological advances. Our friend here at EPFL, Draken Durrell, who's the CEO of Logitech, he phrased that very nicely. He says, look, everything can be reinvented nowadays. Think about a sensor that you could put into a chair or a table, and the sensor will enable the chair or the chair of the table to be smart tables, and you can do, or smart chairs, and you can do all kinds of important secondary applications with this. In the train business, for instance, if you're running a railway, you can put a sensor into the chairs in the wagons, and people know where are the empty seats, and they don't have to run up and down the perron in order to understand where the empty seats are. Okay, and this is just one example. If you think about another example that is quite dear to the heart of everyone living here in Switzerland, but of course is understandable for everyone abroad as well, is the flexibility that technology enables you with existing products or any new type of product. Let me figure out or depict this example with the traditional watchmaker example that is shown here. You see that on the left. If you have a watchmaking company, think about a very traditional one, maybe if 200 years old, they are like 5-8 generations in the family business, and they are super proud of that watch that you're making. You have a great brand, etc. Okay, this is a timekeeping on your wrist type of company. Okay, when you put sensors into this watch, what else could you do? You could measure any bodily function. You can measure the blood pressure. You can measure maybe sugar levels in the blood, whatever. Okay, but you become essentially a medical device company. And what's described here is more of the effort, of course, is in understanding how you acquire these capabilities, yes, in order to put the sensors into the watch, etc. However, the effort is also a cognitive one in your brain. Why? Because for the longest time you have been thinking, well, you use something on your wrist to measure time. And measuring time is just one axis of what you could measure, And if you lean back and say, okay, I zoom out a bit, maybe it's not only about measuring time, but I'm a company that could measure anything on a wrist, And that is a big realization for someone who has been in a company for decades and has a long family heritage in that company. For a startup, if you are just embarking on a journey, you should not be so rigid and just think, okay, that's the only thing we can do. Maybe we need to reframe, re-understand of what we're actually offering. And that's what I'm inviting you to do. And if you look at the companies that are super successful nowadays, everyone from Google, from which is now Alphabet, from Facebook, they're all moving into adjacent domains where else they could grow. And let me illustrate this with an example that we all know, Uber. Okay, you might say Uber, that's a taxi service company. And I'm agreeing with you. You know, statisticians would probably put Uber in the taxi service company. Is Uber caring about what other people, where other people place them into, in which statistical category? Probably not. Look at what they are doing. They are in food delivery, you know, which is not taxi services. And they also started to engage in tourism. You know, the tourism industry in Napa Valley, close to Silicon Valley, you might know that there are lots of vineyards, and they put people, they offer rides to people who want to visit these vineyards and taste the wine. And actually, it's a nice idea if you're trying to taste wine at a lot of vineyards that someone else is driving you, okay? But what we see here is a very interesting pattern, and I really want to invite you to reflect about your startup project in a similar manner, okay? Say, hey, we are not this one-trick pony that can only do one thing, but we can be much more. You know? For Uber, what they are looking at here is moving beyond industry boundaries, defining the firm as something, as a firm that can grow in all kinds of dimensions, as a firm that can offer important services in other industry and market settings, okay? And when we look at this, and a key implication is already arising. What are the opportunities that Uber can see for its services, for its capabilities in a general language, okay? So it's about understanding multiple opportunities, figuring out what a good starting position is. And you remind when how I describe this exactly comes back to what I was just discussing in the front end of my speech when I said, look, what we learned from the serial entrepreneurs is that they try to see more of the opportunities out there and then pick a good starting position for them, okay? And if you look at what Uber is doing here, they picked a good starting position with the taxi business, but they are looking at multiple opportunities and see where else they could grow. Yeah? The same pattern can be described here with Apple, what Apple is doing, you know? You might say Apple is a computer manufacturer at heart. I would fully agree. But what Apple has been doing is to say, okay, we leverage, that's the technical term here, leverage our capabilities into other domains where we can grow. Sounds familiar? Yes, we have just seen this with Uber. Apple is moving basically into, you know, first move into cell phones, were extremely successful there, which was a distinct industry from computers. Now they are trying to move into the car space. Autonomous driving is a big thing for them. And if you want to look at that more systematically, you say, okay, we have, as Apple, key competences, noted here as A and B on the left side, that you would need to do to produce the iPhone, iPad. You know, think about everything from the design to the entertainment app store to the computer science competences. And they say, look, the future of the car, as you see depicted here, for instance, in that picture, will very much be shaped by computer science and by entertainment, of course, by design as well. And these are core elements where we are already good at. Of course, we are not yet able to build a car on a chassis because we need to figure out what it means to build a chassis. We need to figure out what it means to build that motor. Okay? But the first step here that I'm trying to describe is one where they realize, well, we can actually grow in a domain, which is the car space, where it's a lot about software in the future, where there's a lot about entertainment in the future. You know, think of just about an autonomously driving car. You will need to be entertained. You want to be entertained, you know, because if you're going without doing anything from A to B for 3 hours, you know, what do you do in the car? You know, and having an app store providing you with entertainment offerings is actually quite nice for Apple because you're a captive audience. You know, you are in that car for the next X hours. So this process that I'm describing has two sides to it. Number one, it's this entrepreneurial insight that they can actually grow in this domain, underlying it an idea that they are not wedded to one industry domain only. And second, then, of a more managerial kind of question where they say, how can we actually acquire the competences that are needed to become a viable car producer? And there they can collaborate with other car manufacturers like Fiat, you know, they can hire away engineers from Daimler, from BMW, etc., in order to really, you know, create these competences that are needed for the future car that you see up there in the picture. Yeah? And just to conclude that story, in a way, Daimler has faced the reverse type of question, and not having now to acquire lots of competences in computer science, etc. Yeah? So what does this mean, big picture? And that's really where I want to get you a bit out of your custom thinking and say, hey, let's reflect upon the on-side of our venture. Let's take the time to really define what we want to do, what we could do in the future, and what we are actually thinking about our core to be our core right now. You know? And helpful for this is this type of graph here. That it's a nice table that my colleague Rita McGrath from Columbia Business School has assembled in her wonderful book that I can recommend to everyone, The End of Competitive Advantage, where she basically said, look, as established companies and also as entrepreneurs, we tend to think too much about the industry as being a confined space where we can play. Okay? What we should do is to think much more in an arena. What do we mean with arena? It's basically this opportunity space, the growth turf that you could conquer beyond where your core industry is. Okay. And if you look at the Uber example, I think it's a very nice example of saying, okay, yes, they might be in the taxi business as an industry, but they can grow in all of these domains, in the arena. What does this mean deep down? And that's what this table shows, okay? In the industry perspective, and those of you who have done a management education, you're very familiar, of course, with a name like Michael Porter, out of Harvard Business School, where you say, okay, we need to, in order to become successful within the industry setting, you need to have positional advantage. You have to maybe be the number 1 or 2 in that industry. Your measure of success is typically market share. Well, we are Nokia in their heyday in 2007. They had something like 52% market share. Okay, and that was a key measure of success. They were extremely worried that the number 2 or number 3 in the industries would merge and become larger than them. Okay, so the biggest threat is intra-industry moves in this logic. Yeah? And if we move down the likely acquisition behavior, if you are Nokia, you want to, maybe buy up the number 2 and become even more dominant. And we see this pattern over and over again. This I don't want to say that this is a wrong type of thinking. Of course, you need to be highly performing in the setting in the industry. Okay, but when you have this type of logic, this is a logic that often precludes having another type of logic. So it's a bit difficult to bridge these two logics. When you think about the arena perspective, there are key differences. Number 1, as a goal, it's about capturing territory, growth space. If you think about the Uber example, I think that's a perfect illustration of this. Okay, the measure of success here is the share of the potential opportunity space that you might be able to conquer. I agree with you that this is much less precise than market share, but this should not be an excuse for not thinking about it that way. As an entrepreneur, you can think of, well, actually, I was thinking I offer something for this domain, but maybe I can offer something for other domains too. Later on, not maybe now. Maybe one of these other domains is even better than the current one. So let's be flexible on this front. If we move down, the key drivers here is the jobs to be done in the total customer experience. Think about this watchmaker that I just cited. As a customer who suffers maybe from diabetes, you want to have a very discrete type of watch that measures your blood sugar level, because you don't want to broadcast to the world that you have this diabetes suffering. Okay, so in that sense, you might even be super glad that a company that is a traditional watchmaking business offers now watches that has this medical device function. Okay? Likely acquisition behavior and this type of logic in the arena logic is one, and that's the last line here where it's about new capability acquisition, often across industry boundaries. Okay, so the Apple example that I just has given is a nice example there, because we are there. We saw a company that is now actively getting the capabilities on board to produce a car. With partnering with Fiat, working together with hiring away engineers from Daimler, etc. Okay, what we see here is an invitation to really think broadly. We cannot force you to think about an arena. But what we have seen with startups that are extremely successful is that they early on embraced the idea that they can move in an arena, grow in an arena, scale up in an arena, okay? That they are not a one-trick pony, but they are much more. And this is a very sympathetic thought. It's a very dynamic thought. It's something where you say, hey, I can craft a startup that actually has a lot of power to grow. And I can craft a startup where I have initially an interesting market space. Many of you would say, well, that's a lucky insight. I've stumbled upon an opportunity. We know lots of these stories, okay? I had a good glass of wine. I had this idea. I wasn't standing in the shower. I had this type of idea, But this is not very practical, What we have learned from the serial entrepreneurs is that this is exactly not a lucky process. Luck is always part of life. I don't want to even say that, Of course, luck is a part of life. But if you can do this more systematically, see more of the opportunity landscape, then this is something which you should aspire to do. We have done lots of research on that front. Here you see Ian Macmillan, Jimmy Thompson, Sharon Tal, 3 dear colleagues who have worked with me on this topic. Sharon, of course, writing the book later on with me. What we see here, and just drop me a line, I'm happy to send you the research papers. But what we see here is a research program that looked at exactly at the questions that I have outlined initially, trying to understand what the serial entrepreneurs are doing, those who are expert in entrepreneurship, trying to understand how you can see more of the arena, or if you want to say so, opportunity landscape. Okay, and what we have seen, it's very much a function of team composition. As a venture team, if you're very homogeneous, don't have a lot of different industries represented within the team. Of course, the likelihood that you see something that is moving beyond your industry is much lower than if you have, think about Uber, someone in the Uber leadership team that is actually coming out of tourism that say, actually, we should apply what we do at Uber in this exciting domain. Okay, so the key element here is, when I already stressed it, the cognitive flexibility. And this is something which you can practice, you can train as an entrepreneur fairly easily, and it's actually quite a lot of fun. So I truly want to invite you to do that. What I illustrated with before actually heading then into the method is the example of an EPFL startup called EndoArt, developed by a colleague of mine called Nikos Tergiopoulos. And what he said is, look, we have developed this stent. And this stent is actually, you can put them in the arteries, and it prevents you from having congenital heart disease because there's less clogging, etc. in the vein. We don't have to care about the physical principles behind it. But essentially he said, look, I could define my company as a company helping you to fight congenital heart disease, okay? Which is a great goal. No? But he said, look, with that type of principle that I've developed, these capabilities, I can actually be much more. I don't have to be only fighting congenital heart disease, but wherever blood flows in the body, I can have an application. I can help you, okay? This is from everything you see there listed, from cerebrovascular disease up to artificial vessels, grafts. And he says, look, our focus as EndoArt is not congenital heart disease. We are blood flow technology. And bear with me for a second, because I think this is a very important learning that is embedded in here. As an entrepreneur, you are choosing the way you define your company, okay? This can be congenital heart disease, very narrow. But by doing so, you basically preclude your growth in these other domains. The analog would be Uber saying, we are a taxi service company. Get out, move away. We don't want to hear even about other things. Yes, you can have this approach, and that's your choice. What I really want to push you for here is thinking a bit more broadly, and think like Nikos and saying, hey, we are actually blood flow technology. And if you think about this, he could even say we are flow technology, because wherever something flows in your body, or beyond, we can actually help you, okay? So think about big picture, flow technology, pipelines, water pipes in your house, whatever. This would be also probably something where he could address. But what I'm explaining here is basically a process where you're zooming in and zooming out. You mentioned that, remember that on and in slide that I showed you? This is exactly what this means here. You're working on the company. You're trying to define the parameter of your company. You're trying to understand whether you're a blood flow technology company, a flow technology company, or maybe fighting congenital heart disease, okay? And when you think about what I'm describing here, it's really about having this flexibility in your head. This doesn't cost you anything. It costs you time, maybe a bar of chocolate to get this energy in your brain, okay? But this is wonderful to also do with a team, to bring the team on the same page and actually understand what type of decisions you might have made earlier that narrow you in too much. What I'm suggesting here is to have this flexibility. What I'm proposing is that you engage in a process that helps you develop that flexibility in a very sharp and wonderful and I think easy to apply method. This is a process that Sharon and me have developed over the last years based on our research insights. So it's really a process that is based on solid empirical research, where we looked at thousands and thousands of startups and look what they didn't do right. We looked at the high-performing ones and tried to see the patterns very well, what the successful startups are doing, okay? I shared with you some of these research insights already earlier, but what we essentially saw is that, well, there's a high need for having a tool that is giving you this big picture understanding. We can always figure out how to, design thinking as a method, how it applies in one domain. But would you even start design thinking if you figure out early on that maybe this is not a good domain to be in? You spend a lot of time maybe doing design thinking, but you have not asked the major question beforehand. Does it make sense to do design thinking in this domain? Or maybe it might make more sense to do design thinking in other domains. And similarly, if you want to develop a business model, would it make sense to develop a business model for a certain domain? Or with a little bit of more reflection, you would have said, well, there's actually another domain that is adjacent that is much more attractive where we could develop the business model. Okay? This is a method that helps you to get going with this thinking. This is called the Market Opportunity Navigator. And it doesn't take long to explain it. So let me spend a few minutes to explain it to you and then invite you to test it yourself. We have put up on the website wheretoplay.co all the free material. You can do it for free. There's nothing you owe us, Sharon and me. Just register, download the material here. You can see lots of videos for free. 99% on that website is for free. We cannot give the books away for free because our publisher would punish us, but all the other stuff is for free. Okay? This is a method with 3 steps. It's about the opportunity set. It's about the attractiveness map. It's about the agile focus dartboard. Initially, you see that with the little bag, it's about figuring out which type of opportunities can you see, and maybe by bringing others into the team or helping you, maybe you can see even more. So think about Uber seeing all of these opportunities that I've mapped out earlier. Okay. The second step is about figuring out which opportunities are a bit more attractive or much more attractive than others. We do this by understanding the challenge level and the potential level of each opportunity. The challenge level is defined in a certain way. I'll come back to that in a second. And the potential is defined in a certain way. Okay. When you combine this, you have actually an interesting 2x2 matrix with 4 quadrants. If the challenge level is high, but the potential is low, these are questionables. If the challenge level is high, the potential level of the opportunity is high. This is a moonshot, basically everything Elon Musk loves to do. If the challenge level is low, the potential level is high, you would be in a gold mine quadrant, which is quite attractive. The name says it all. And then you have the challenge level low and the potential level low. These are the quick wins. Stuff you could do maybe immediately, and then this serves as a stepping stone towards doing something more ambitious. I'll come back to that with an example in a second, but let me move to the third part of this of the Opportunity Navigator, which is the Agile Focus Dartboard. And you saw that I stressed a couple of times early on in my talk about putting the agility into the DNA of your venture. And this is what the third step helps you to do. Here you say, okay, this is the opportunity we focus on now. Some others we keep open, maybe as a plan B, maybe as a further growth option, and still others we place in storage. What you're doing here is actually to conceive of a roadmap of where you want to grow. And this has implications for many other things, how you define your venture now, which type of brand name you choose, for instance, that gives you a lot of flexibility down the road. And let me explain this a bit more detailed with the flyability example, a drone company out of EPFL who applied the method and helped walk basically through this 3-step process with the worksheets that are behind each of the process steps. And I'm going to show you how the worksheets look like and how that actually maps then in the Opportunity Navigator. The flyability company is a venture out of EPFL. They do this drone in a cage. You see it here nicely depicted on the left side. It's a drone that is elastic, so you can bump it against the wall and it doesn't fall down. All of you have ever flown a drone, you know that it's quite risky with the little propellers. If you hit an obstacle, these propellers typically break and then you have to exchange the propeller, etc., etc. That can be quite costly and of course it's annoying. Having a cage enables you to have a drone that can fly in indoor spaces, confined spaces like this one here. Okay, Flyability had this idea in a market-driven manner by seeing the Fukushima disaster and say, hey, we actually need to have drones that we can send in there and check out, what are the casualties, what is the damage, because they saw also that the robots that were going into this disaster site fell over the rubble. Okay, so it was a market-driven idea. If you already have an idea, you would put this into step 2 of the navigator, and I will explain this later on. Flyability realized that this is not the most magnificent, best opportunity they could possibly see, and therefore applied the Opportunity Navigator. They started with step 1, figuring out what are the opportunities available to them beyond this initial opportunity of helping disaster site in the nuclear area. And you see worksheet 1 here, and I think 2 or 3 important things to understand that helps you also to develop that cognitive flexibility that I mentioned. Number 1, you need to understand where you're good at in your own right. What are the abilities you have or trying to develop as an emerging startup? Okay, you have there for flyability 3 types of abilities. It's a unique accessibility. Well, it has this collision tolerance, decoupled light protection case. You can see the different features here. Of course, the drone can fly. It has on-site video piloting, dark smoke, dusty environments you can fly in, and it has a limited flight duration. These are the aviation abilities. And then moving further to the right, you have an imagery system. You do recording, thermal recording. You can even record what you have done and look at it after the mission. Okay, these are the 3 current abilities that flyability has. Okay, this would be the analog in the Apple example earlier on. What are they good at? In terms of in order to create a car. You need basically a 4th type of ability in the Apple example. This is what flyability has now. You can add maybe machine learning to the mix at the 4th box and other things, blockchain. And that enables even more possibilities. But let's keep it to the 3 right now. This is the upper part, and really it's defined independent of the application they initially perceived. The lower part is about identifying opportunities and being really open and trying to understand where can I apply these abilities to. And let's really try to understand this arena, that is opening up if you have this type of perspective from flyability. They can be in industrial inspection, they can be in infrastructure inspection, then they can be in security, search and rescue, in all of these application fields. And in all of these application fields, you have a couple of different customers who might need your drone. So in industrial inspection, you would have oil and gas industry, the storage tank inspection. The drone flies around the storage tank and inspects it. Nowadays people have to climb up there with ladders, look at it, and see if there are cracks, if there's damage. A drone can do that much more easily. The same with power plants, the thermal boilers. You can inspect the nuclear room. In the shipbuilding industry, you can inspect vessels, fuel tanks of vessels. Moving to the middle, it's about the infrastructure. You can inspect open air facilities. Think about bridges that you need to inspect, or maybe electric landlines that you need to inspect. Indoor facilities you can do inspection. And then in the 3rd box, you have everything that has to do with human beings. You can do intelligence surveillance by the police, military, rescue forces, the firefighters, and for instance, the people who are, trapped in avalanches, whatnot. Okay, what we see here is truly a huge landscape. It's an arena of opportunities. And this company can again think very narrowly. No, we can only do our drone in the inspection of these nuclear disaster sites, or they can do more, be open, see much more of the opportunity landscape. And each of you will be able to do this. This even works with human beings. You put your own competences into the mix here. Okay. I've had a journalist who applied and say, hey, I now see much more of what I could do with my opportunities. What type of opportunities are open to me? Yeah? So this is, I said, a key process. It provides you with flexibility to think, what am I as a company working on this on dimension? Of course, you cannot pursue all these opportunities at once. But once you see more, you can say, hey, that one is the one I want to pursue. We come back to that in a second when we evaluate the opportunities. But there are plan Bs or future growth options. Maybe I should first start here and then I can grow in these other domains. That gives you a very powerful perspective on what firm growth can be. For flyability, they focused on these 5 where they said, hey, this would be something we are passionate about. This would be something where we believe there's a good opportunity potential. And they put these 5 into the second worksheet, which is shown here. This is a worksheet that comes out of 50 years of venture capital research. Basically, the experts in the domain were researched upon, and researchers try to understand how they decide. What are the features, the criteria they look at when they decide upon the ventures they invest. And Sharon and me, we distilled this into 3 dimensions that define the potential and 3 dimensions that define the challenge level of each opportunity. Of course, you cannot probably understand all of those dimensions at once, but they force you in a way when you see this multiplicity of dimensions to try to understand what you're trying to work in a more holistic way. Oftentimes, unfortunately, when I talk to entrepreneurs, they would have a very limited understanding. They would say, hey, it's about market volume. I have a great opportunity. The market is big. Or they say, hey, I've seen this unmet need. Yes, this is a great market. But they often thereby preclude themselves from seeing the other dimensions that are essential to understand whether there's something important that you're working on, something that has a potential, okay? So what this method helps you to do in worksheet 2 is to really be more systematic, have a 360-degree view of what you're trying to do makes sense, okay? So all of you who already have an opportunity in your hands are really invited to put this in here and try to understand whether it's so good as you believe it is, you know? Maybe it is, that would be wonderful for you. If it's not, go back to step 1 and try to see maybe there's other things we can do. With a little bit of change here or there, we can be a better company, okay? Noting that you will devote quite a lot of time in the future on what you're deciding here, you know, it's quite essential that you do this with a clean head, thorough head. You can do this quick and dirty, but we advise you also to call up potential customers in these domains, add information so that this assessment becomes richer and more valid, okay? If you look at the 3 dimensions on the left, it's about really the potential, compelling reason to buy, market volume, economic viability. The overall potential is, you know, roughly a high potential here, you know? I say roughly because this is never a perfect linear summation. You know, it's like say, okay, that's an opportunity, that's a high potential. Same with the challenge level, it's the implementation obstacles, time to revenue, external risks. You know, here you see it's a bit more on the left side, so the challenge level is low to mid. If you do this for all the 5 opportunities from flyability, this is the picture that emerges. What you see here is that you have 1 in the goldmine quadrant, 2 in the moonshot quadrant, and 2, so roughly in the middle. And this is now very interesting. Why? Because you say, hey, actually, maybe I should start with the goldmine, or maybe I should start with the police surveillance. That will cost me more time, but maybe that's a more interesting market. We, as the creators of the tool, as researchers, as people wanting to help you, we don't give you any guidance of saying what you should pick. You know, if you kind of feel suicidal, maybe pick something in the questionable quadrant. There we really would disadvise you maybe, yeah. But even there, maybe you can change a bit the opportunity, make it more attractive, yeah. You know, but we give you this to go into entrepreneurship with a more seeing and open eye, you know, not just with saying, oh, maybe that's good, let's do it, huh? Here you really try to understand whether it has some merit. We guide you towards, you know, helping you to fill in the attractiveness map, and then it's your choice of what you want to do. You know? Let's assume flyability now pursues the power plants, the thermal boilers, because they realize that is a gold mine, you know, opportunity for them. This tool helps you now to figure out, well, if this works out, where else could we grow? You know, maybe this oil, gas, and storage tank is a market that is not too far away. It's also energy somehow. And maybe the drone that we are creating is not so different. So this might be a very easy to step into second opportunity once the first one works out. If the first one should not work out, maybe you want to think, well, I want to have a plan B that is not similar to the plan A, because if plan A fails and plan B is quite similar to plan A, likelihood is high that plan B fails as well, okay? So maybe police surveillance might be a good secondary opportunity. What I'm describing here qualitatively is actually the purpose of sheet 3. Worksheet 3 helps you to do exactly what I just described, try to understand the characteristics of the portfolio you have. You know? This is, again, a strategic question, the on question. You put in the first top line your primary opportunity, the power plants, the thermal boilers, okay? Remember this is the anchor opportunity that you choose, okay? And then there are pairwise comparisons. You know, you do in the second line, you put in the other opportunities that you say, okay, these could be imaginable as stepping stones into the future, plan Bs, whatnot. You put them here, and then you do pairwise comparison. You compare the power plants with the oil, gas, and storage tank, and then you go down the column and say, how strongly are the products related? You know, how strong is the drone in the power plant thermal boilers that you would use there related to the oil, gas, and storage drones? Okay, and say, actually, that's fairly similar. We need to change it a little bit here and there. So it's a middle overlapping ring. The markets are quite close. As I mentioned earlier, these are both energy markets. So there's word of mouth between the markets. Things that we learn in domain 1 are really meaningful for domain 2. So we say this is overlapping. This would be a good growth option for us, you know, going further down this column, you know. Why? Because if we are successful in the first one, we could grow there. And that's kind of cool because we are not a one-trick pony. We can actually grow in this domain and enter it once we are successful in the first one. So we keep this open, the last line of this sheet. And you do this pairwise comparison for all other opportunities, these pairs, and say, hey, power plants to maritime vessel inspection, power plants to police surveillance. And police surveillance has the characteristic of being a good backup option because it does not share the same main characteristics as your primary option, the power plants. and therefore could be a good plan B. A good plan B, again, is a plan that does not share the main risks with your plan A. I think that's a good advice for everything you do in life, but in particular here as well. If you put this all then together, you have the agile focus dartboard emerging in front of your eyes. You have now put the attractiveness map result and said, hey, that's what we're going to pursue now. We keep 3 others open as plan Bs or future growth options, and we put 1 away. We place it in storage, the power plants, the nuclear rooms. This is an important ring as well. Why? Because this placing in storage keeps you sane in your head. As an entrepreneur, you get bombarded with so much information. You need to think about so many things. So putting something away is truly a pleasure, and trust me, you will like that too. All the entrepreneurs I talked with said, well, the pursue now is important, but it's as important to understand what you're not going to do. So we put this away. Okay. Big picture now, and I mentioned this is a process to work on the on. This is a process where you need to lean back. This is a process where you can be creative with your team. This is a joyful, exciting process because you're really mapping out what you can do as your venture. You push yourself out of the comfort zone a bit, of course, but that's a wonderful exercise case to go through with your venture. Venture is something where you dedicate your life to. You are working so hard. So please work on something that makes sense. That's what the method should do. Going broad, first step, assessing it, second step, focusing, third step. Okay. Overall, by doing this, you're also not making several mistakes that the novice entrepreneurs are making. Of course, first, you are looking at which opportunities might be better one than others. Second, you are becoming more agile in your head already. And that is then evident in the venture you create. Because if you think about this, you would never choose a brand name once you have seen multiple options like this one here for flyability, a brand name like we are a company drones inspecting nuclear power plants.com. You never would choose such a brand name. Of course, I'm making an extreme example here, but there are companies out there that did this. CD Now, for instance, or in some sense also Salesforce.com, which competes against Oracle and now is a bit trapped in the customer relation management corner. Okay. Again, this is a process that helps you to see the broad picture. It helps you focus in the end. And in doing so, you realize, well, I could be many other things in the future. So I choose flyability as a name because it allows me to be so flexible. It puts agility into my venture. Okay. Maybe I should also hire, if I have a choice between a couple of engineers, some who are able to more flexibly design the drone so I can enter these other domains, etc., etc. IP strategy is related to this. Okay. So by doing this process, you are becoming an entrepreneur that sees more of the opportunity landscape. The tool that I've shown you now, is a tool that is distinct from the tools that are out there. And that's why Steve Blank, the Silicon Valley legend that is the creator of the lean startup toolset, said basically, look, in my lean methodology, we used to have 3 key types of tools. The business model canvas, you see this in his blog post here from May 7, 2019, the customer development process, and then you have agile engineering. These are the 3 main tools. I blow this up for you so that you can actually read what he has written in his blog from last May, May 2019. He said, look, lean methodology has these 3 elements. Business model canvas is about figuring out a good business model in a given market. Customer development is figuring out product market fit in that market. And agile engineering, i.e. the minimum viable product. More people might know this, the minimum viable product you try to design in order to get to product market fit. These 3 types of tools, approaches within the lean methodology help you to understand how to play in a certain domain. They don't yet help you to understand if this is a good domain to start with. It's the where to play question that matters here. What is the opportunity landscape? Which are the domains that are available to you? And which one would be a good way to one to start with? And that's the where to play question that the Opportunity Navigator describes as he wrote. Okay, so he adopted the tool in his lean toolset. You see this overall picture here. I don't want to go into the details here because this is not a talk about lean methodology, but just to give you an understanding of how these methods are plug and play and actually reinforce each other in their value. On the top, you see the Opportunity Navigator. On the bottom, on the middle, you see the business model canvas, and the bottom, you see the customer development and agile product development process that should lead to product market fit. This is overall a learning process where you're exploring new things in innovation, in entrepreneurship, where on the top, you're making sure that you're working in a good domain, on a good opportunity. Then in the middle and at the bottom, you're trying to learn within these domains. You do hypothesis testing. You are trying to understand if this is a good supplier. You're trying to understand how you can achieve best product market fit. And that feedback then will go back up. And maybe if you figure out, well, that market opportunity is not as good as I imagined, as I understood with my preliminary test, you can choose another one and do the same overall. This is another way of looking at cognitive flexibility. If you want to learn more, of course, there's the book. It's available in multiple languages. Every year, there's a couple of languages being added to it. It originated with the English version in 2017. There's a German version, a Chinese version, Vietnamese version, French version, Spanish version, and we're talking just now to publishers for other regions as well. Yeah, this is a book that explains the method. But I also mentioned that there is a lot of free material out there. You can go online on edX, where you have an in-depth course about the Opportunity Navigator. You can look at our YouTube channel, where you see the flyability case in more depth and other videos. A lot of supporting materials, worksheets, and a web app can be downloaded for free at wheretoplay.co. Remember, wheretoplay.co.com. And of course, you can reach me with email, Sharon as well, my colleague, and I'm on Twitter. So I thank you for your attention and want to really encourage you to take the time now, maybe over a weekend, get together with your team and reflect on the on component of your venture. Because if you don't reflect on it, and just work on the in, you're missing a big chance to become successful. Thank you for the attention, and I'm happy to take questions now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you a lot, Marc Gruber, for this insightful presentation. Maybe just a first question. How do you really apply also this to social ventures? Because you mentioned those two areas, potential and challenges. There was a masterclass on another day given by a colleague of yours, Beatrice Jaroni, that talked about tech for impact. How do you apply this maybe in those different contexts?
Thank you very much. A very important question. In the interest of time, I focused on the ventures that would be looking at mostly the financial returns. Of course, there are also social and sustainability returns added to this. What we have done is to create a worksheet 2B, which allows you to assess next to the financial dimensions, that the potential and challenge level, also the sustainability dimensions that are essential. And they are available for download as well on the website. This is an easy add-on to the whole process that allows you to branch out and add these important additional dimensions to, if you have a sustainability or social project. The process as such does not get more complicated, it just adds richness, this second worksheet 2B.
Okay, thank you a lot. And then just another question also of pure interest. When building such a tool, how do you get the data to be able to also gather all this information and build all those insights?
This is the hardcore work of an entrepreneurship or scientist here. I started doing this type of research in 2002 by teaching a class actually at the University of Munich, where people had emerging technologies or came with a market opportunity that they saw and didn't really know whether this is something valuable to work on or worthwhile to work on. And I got inspired by this question and didn't read and looked at the literature and saw that there's not really a good answer to helping people in this very important question. You want to figure out if you're doing something reasonable with your time. And I embarked on a research project where I collected data on emerging businesses, startups. Okay, first 150 startups that were venture capital backed, later on 500 startups that were in a completely different context, unemployed people getting into entrepreneurship. Later on, adding to that, and Sharon adding to this. So it's survey data, interviewing people, and a startup in that, and that's my final comment to answer your question. In a startup setting, you can actually do this research quite well because you understand very well what they work on. You know the 3-4 people you can interview well. You know what they did throughout the startup process, and therefore get a good grasp of what they have been doing. In the large company setting, where this method can also be applied to understand where the next step for Nestle, this next step for other companies, this would be kind of messy to do research on, because so many people on so many hierarchy levels would be involved in opportunity identification, assessment, etc. So the startup setting is really something clean, easy to observe, relatively easy to observe, to collect data that is of high quality, and that it was also the outcome. The papers that I've shown you, and I'm kind of proud of this, have been published in the world-leading management journals. We have the top 7, and they are in there. So that was a good addition to management theory and entrepreneurship theory too.
Okay, thank you a lot. And also, I can imagine that I think you've said it multiple times, but there is also this importance of iteration, because sometimes when we try to use a tool like this one, we might want to stay stuck into the possibility we've chosen. It's a process that is constantly ongoing, right?
Absolutely, and I think that's really the process I invite you to engage in and to embrace, because this is the normal entrepreneurial and innovation process. It's flexibility, it's trying to learn, it's trying to get new information, and while also not getting locked into quickly into something that might lead you down a path that is too narrow or too unsuccessful, does not promise enough success. So this flexibility that you mentioned is super critical. And you need to train it. If and you need to remind yourself as an entrepreneur and innovator that this is something you need to develop. We can already, as a scientist, as a VP innovation, as an educator in the domain, I can only carry you so far. The last step that you actually apply it primarily in your brain is your choice, and I just say it's important.
Thank you a lot. And also maybe it's the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020, and that's something we ask to many of our speakers. Do you have any recommendation, any last word? What's your message to these new generations of entrepreneurs, especially during the times we're experimenting today with the coronavirus situation? Many of them are feeling maybe under a little bit. What's your message to them?
My message is actually a very positive one. If you look at all the technological disruptions that we are seeing nowadays, if you think about everything from blockchain, digitalization, personalized medicine, other things, drones, we have that example. There's so much technologically fueled opportunity out there. If you think about a drone coupled with AI can do many more things than just a drone. What we are seeing out there has never been witnessed before in the history of humankind. This sounds dramatic, and it is, because originally we had one or two disruptions at the same time. Think about an engine, think about the light bulb. It took 30, 40 years until it diffused through society. Nowadays we have 7, 8, however you want to count it, fundamental disruptions, and this changes. Like Breck and Darrell quote that I had earlier on a slide. This changes basically everything. You can reinvent everything, and with that, there's so much entrepreneurial potential that's out there. There are so many things that you can do, but it takes a step from understanding the technological competence and applying it and for customer need. This is still an entrepreneurial step, and I explained it with Apple and the other companies. And this is where the ingenuity, the creativity, the open-mindedness of any fledgling entrepreneur, nascent entrepreneur of this generation comes in. And this has to do, of course, young people are good at that, but I see many older folks as well who are really good at that, and I think my invitation would really be to embrace the opportunities. And in a crisis, what is a crisis like the one currently doing? It shifts the business landscape, moves everything into digital, or much more into digital at a rapid pace. So if things are changing, this is by itself good for entrepreneurs, because they are able to enter markets that might have been precluded early on.
Thank you a lot for those wonderful insights. So now someone in the chat asked if it will be possible to maybe get the PowerPoints. Is that okay?
I can share them, yes, as a PDF. And please, if you want to have the worksheets, they are also for download at the website. This all is for free. Please use them and enjoy them and become more successful. And if you are more successful, send me a little note, because that makes me happy.
Thank you a lot for this wonderful masterclass, a great start for this day dedicated to entrepreneurship. So Marc Gruber, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for hosting me.